to go to Hollywood and test my luck. I had enough courage to do it. I lucked out. I auditioned at a comedy store in Hollywood, and that was a mecca of comedy those days. People like Robin Williams, David Letterman, Billy Crystal, Jay Leno, all those guys were working there at that time. David Letterman helped me to fill out my citizenship application. It was for Iraq. And then I started making movies. I made a movie with Robin Williams, Moscow on the Hudson, movie with Tom Hanks, Money Pit, movie with Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson called Heartburn. And I'm proud to say, after working with me, all of those actors won an Oscar. And I got Oscar Mayer Wiener. So I put Grey Poupon on it. So everything was going great, and then I get a phone call from the White House. And they said, we'd like you to come to Washington and perform in front of the Bushes. I said, this will get me arrested. But what was happening at that time, George Bush Sr. was a vice president for President Reagan. They said, no, we need to come here to perform in front of President Reagan's cabinet. I go, well, that's better than the Bushes. At least I made it inside. So I go there. They introduced me to the president. They said, Mr. President, this is Yakov Smirnov. He's a Russian comedian. And President Reagan smiled and he said, well, have you heard this joke? And he proceeds to tell me a joke about the Russian guy who wants to buy a car. It took forever in those days to buy a car in the Soviet Union. So he goes to a dealership, and the manager said, put your name on the list, put your deposit down, come back in 20 years, pick up the car. The guy said, do I come back in the morning or in the afternoon? The manager said, what's the difference? 20 years from now. The guy said, the plumber is scheduled to come that morning. I cracked up. I didn't expect to be so funny. And then now everybody looks at me. Now it's my turn to entertain the president. And I said, Mr. President, you know, when Americans landed on the moon, that was a big slap in the face to the Soviet government. So Brezhnev called all the cosmonauts into his office and said, Americans landed on the moon. We have to land on the sun. I said, Comrade Brezhnev, we can't do that. We will burn up. He said, do you think I'm stupid? You land at night. Boy, was I happy when they laughed, I'll tell you that. And the president and myself were telling jokes to one another for the whole evening. And in the end, people were laughing, and then towards the end, he leans closer to me and he goes, Yakov, how would you deal with Gorbachev? And I'm going, am I the most qualified to answer this question? He goes, you are, because you lived in the Soviet Union for 26 years. None of us politicians have. And I said, well, Mr. President, I think your humor is so amazing that you can connect with Secretary Gorbachev, but you also need to know that their military is not as great as they say it is. Because when they shoot a missile, then they have to go watch CNN to see where it landed. But please don't tell this to Gorbachev. So President Reagan laughed, and a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from his head speechwriter. And he said, this is very confidential, but President Reagan is going to go to Russia to meet with Gorbachev for the first time. This is a big deal, because American presidents have not been on the Soviet soil in decades. In addition to talking to Gorbachev, he wants to do a speech in front of all the Russian politicians in Kremlin. So President Reagan asked you to write jokes for his speech. I'm thinking, if this doesn't work, I don't have any countries to go to. I'll be an official comedian for Fidel Castro. So I wrote some jokes, and they liked them. They put them in a speech. It was the best summit they had. After that summit, the Berlin Wall came down. Countries that were controlled by the Soviet Union became free. Today, you can buy a Russian missile on the eBay. That's a big change, and I want to know what happened behind those closed doors. I had a hunch it had to do something with Reagan's ability to connect through laughter. And 2 years later, I meet the interpreter, who was the only other person in the room with Reagan and Gorbachev. And I said, look, I don't want to know any secrets, but can you please tell me, was there any laughter in that room? He said, why do you need to know that? I said, I'm a comedian, and I've been studying laughter since I was a child. And I believe that laughter has two ingredients. You need to meet each other's needs before you can use humor to trigger the laughter. If the needs are not met, then there will be no laughter. He goes, oh, that's pretty interesting. He said, first 2 days, there was no laughter. I guess they were talking at each other, but not to each other. Then Reagan got fed up with it, and he got up and headed for the door. But before he opened the door, he turned around, had a big smile on his face. He extended his hand to Gorbachev and said, my name is Ronnie. Can I call you Misha? Can we just be friends? Let's play Red Rover, let McDonald's come over. Gorbachev laughed, and this is exactly how the Cold War ended. So the world was changing, and my world was changing because, I moved to Branson, Missouri. Any of you have been to my theater in Branson? Applaud if you have. Okay, so Branson is not necessarily a place where I was voted to be in my high school yearbook. To be more likely to be in Branson, Missouri. So the reason it happened is because on the day of the collapse of the Soviet Union, David Letterman had a top 10 list of things that will now change that the Soviet Union fell apart. I made number 1 on the list. Yakov Smirnov will be out of work. You see, I thought it was funny too. 6 months later, I wasn't laughing. None of my contracts, I'm not making this up, none of my contracts in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Reno, Tahoe, none of them were renewed. So I started looking for a place where they did not know that the Soviet Union collapsed. I ended up in Branson, Missouri. They still don't know. And I'm not about to tell them. But how I learned about it, I was kind of looking for work at that time, and Willie Nelson was doing a Farm Aid concert in Ames, Iowa. There's like 40,000 people, and they invited me to be a co-host. And I was nervous because I grew up in the city. I didn't know much about, farm animals. And at the exhibit, this guy played practical joke on me. He let me milk his bull. I learned something. You milk this animal once, you have a friend for life. He was following me around. So I told this story to this 40,000 farmers. They loved it. And I go say thank you to Willie Nelson. I go to his the tour bus, and I open the door, and there's smoke coming out of there. And I'm realizing these are not normal cigarettes. There may be cigarettes that cat peed on. And Willie, you can't even see him. He's, and he goes, Hey, kid, you did good. You should go to Branson, Missouri. They'll love you there. And then he offers me the cigarette, and I didn't feel good about taking it because he was, already sharing it with 4 other people. But what do? You just... so I came out of there realizing 2 things. I need to go to Branson, and that I have a big case of the munchies. So I came to Branson. I was learning English for 20 years. Then I moved to the Ozarks. I had to start all over again. And then I married an American woman. Actually, she's not real American. She's from Oregon. Anybody here from Oregon? Applaud if you are. Yeah, they don't get out much. I met Linda in Oregon. I was performing at the college that she was graduating from, and she was asked by the school to pick me up at the airport and take me to the theater, and then go take me back to a hotel. And she's a beautiful lady, and she enjoyed the show. Nice romantic night. We're heading towards the hotel, and she said, "Do you want to go all the way?" And I wanted to make a nice impression. I said, "No." And so she dropped me off 2 miles from the hotel. I'm walking saying, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." So then we dated for a while. I proposed to her, and we were supposed to go meet her parents. Now, would you say that people in Oregon are pretty conservative? Yes, no? Okay, let me rephrase it. Would you say Russian son-in-law is not number 1 on their wish list? So her mom was really trying. She said, she goes, "Yakov, did you pick the date for the wedding?" And I said, "Wow, you can bring a date to your own wedding?" What a country, all right. Her mom laughed, her dad didn't. He insisted that I go play golf with him next morning. My score was 84. We didn't play a second hole. Because it got dark, and he was not a happy camper. And he said to me, before the wedding, Linda will want to have a shower. I said, there is a good idea right there. I'll freshen up myself. Then he laughed, gave his blessings to our marriage, and we got married in Hawaii. Beautiful wedding. It was very picturesque. Sunset overlooking the ocean. I arranged that a helicopter brought Linda and her dad to the wedding site. It was like a Hollywood production. But Tom Cruise almost ruined Linda's and my wedding because he was on the island that day, and someone spotted him, and half of the women from the wedding party during the ceremony ran over to take a look at Tom Cruise. Upset the heck out of me. I said, "Linda, you get back here." Made me mad because I want to see him too. So we were creating a lot of laughter. And now, looking back, I know why. Because we were meeting each other's needs. Now I'm clear about this because I went out of my way to meet her need, to create this picturesque wedding. And she would go out of her way to meet my needs. Yep. And so we got 2 kids out of that deal. Natasha and Alexander. Took us a while to figure out their names because when our daughter was born, my wife wanted a real American name for her, Brandy. And I said, "Brandy Smirnov?" Why don't we just send her to a rehab daycare center? so she can play with Gene Beam and Johnny Walker. And Linda was laughing. It was great to hear. And then our son was born, and it was, I was nervous, a little bit because, being a dad, you're kind of wondering what's going to happen because Linda was in labor with our daughter for 22 hours. Yeah. And with our son, 22 minutes. Goes to show you that women take a lot longer to get ready. So I'm holding this little Alexander, and I said to Linda, what if they switch him in the hospital by mistake and we'll bring home and it's not our baby? And Linda said, don't worry, our baby is not going to be crying. It's going to be going, So laughter was there. We were having good time, but things happen in life. In the beginning of the relationship, I remember, we would be on the phone for hours. I would tour around the country and we would be late at night. One of us would say, we need to go to sleep. You hang up first. And the other said, no, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. Did you hang up yet? And a couple of years later, you hang up first. Hello? Hello? So we were starting to feel this, and I wasn't clear exactly what was happening, but laughter was kind of fading away. And that's a good thing to notice. I didn't. And I remember putting Alexander to bed one time, and he was cranky and crying. And I'm singing a Russian lullaby, and I'm singing «Чижик, пижик, где ты был? На фонтанке водку пил». And my wife is looking at me, it's like, what does that mean? I said, oh, it's a little song my mom used to sing to me when I was a baby. It says, little birdie, why so blue? I drank vodka, why don't you? My wife did not laugh. And on her face, I can see pull over, step away from the baby. I said, wait a minute, what about the songs you're singing, like Rockabye Baby, when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby cradle and all. Sounds like insurance company jingle. My wife did not laugh. She took Alexander from me. She said, I'll show you how to put him to bed. And she takes him from me. She puts him in the bassinet. She puts bassinet on top of the dryer. She turned on the dryer. 2 minutes later, he's sound asleep. I'm going, oh, great. All other kids are going to go to daycare center. I have to drop him off at the laundromat. Yeah, that one is mine right there. Yes, with dryer sheet in his mouth and a wrinkle-free butt. I thought it was funny. My wife did not laugh. I should have noticed this. You see, with my audience, when there is no laughter when I'm planning it to be, that tells me, it doesn't tell me that you lost your sense of humor or I lost it. No. The only thing, I didn't meet your needs. It's all about meeting the needs because like you came here because you needed to laugh. I came here because I needed your money. As long as we're meeting each other's needs, we're fine. Laughter is going to live there. But I did not pay attention to it.